Hi, big kids. Mrs. Carrera. All right, I believe these are our last two chapters. So chapter 36 starts with Big Idea. Please pass the butter. As she handed the butter dish across the table to Alec, his mom said, I got an email today from the school about next Monday's open house. They've made extended day part of the program this year. I think that's nice, don't you? Not really, he said, because it means there'll be a ton more people there. And Mrs. K said they're only doing this because of a scheduling problem. Well, I still think it's very nice, she said. Alex shrugged and said, fine. Jumping in to change the subject, Alex's dad said, so how far did you get with Fahrenheit 451? Finished yet? Alex shook his head. About halfway through. I really like it, but do you think anything like that could ever happen in the future, where books were totally outlawed? His dad said, there are lots of countries right now whose governments try to control everything people read. Or watch on TV, his mom added, or listen to the radio or access through the internet. And remember how the Nazis burned piles of books in the streets, like in The Book Thief? Same thing. And if it happened once, it could happen again. Nodding wisely and speaking to no one in particular, Luke muttered, dictators, and then stuffed a wad of lasagna the size of a golf ball into his mouth. Right, his dad said. Dictators are always afraid they're going to lose control, and they always do. Alex spread butter onto a piece of warm Italian bread, but as he started to take a bite, a thought hit him, hard. This afternoon, when I wanted to tell those kids they couldn't change the name of the club, that was being a dictator. So, am I scared I'm going to lose control, or lose respect, or lose this weird battle I've been having with Kent, and lose Nina as my friend? It was because of the word lose. Using it 4 times in a row, one phrase right after another. That's what caused the idea to come zooming straight at Alec. A big one. It landed smack in the middle of his mind. He scooted his chair back from the table. Save my plate, okay? I have to do something. His mom shook his head. Stay and finish your dinner. Without another word, Alec methodically demolished his food. 3 minutes later, he said, May I please be excused now, with a mouthful of food. He was excused, and by 7:30, Alec had an email ready to send to the 17 other members of the Losers Club. Hi, can we all agree to hold off on the name change thing until after the open house on Monday? We can have a vote about it next Tuesday after school, and whatever the majority wants to call the club, that will be fine with me. But I have an idea for the open house, and I need some information from each of you. Email to me later tonight if possible, and by tomorrow at 7 p.m. at the latest, okay? Then Alec described what he wanted each club member to send him. They were all probably going to think he was crazy, including Nina. But Alec didn't care. He didn't want to look stupid or unprepared at the open house any more than they did, and as long as everybody went along with him, he was sure this idea was going to work. Well, pretty sure. But he was going to need a lot of help from Luke, because this plan was going to take some serious computer know-how, plus some printer skills, other stuff too. Alex scribbled a quick list of the supplies he would need, looking it over and deciding that between his mom's home office and his dad's home office, most of these things weren't going to be a problem, so that was good. The biggest problem? Time. Because 8 o'clock next Monday evening was going to get here fast. The message was finished and Alec had triple-checked each address. He read it all over again for the 4th time. Then he took a deep breath and made himself click the send button. His computer made a loud whoosh, and the email was on its way. It was time to stop worrying and get to work. All right, here we go. Chapter 37, Best Book Ever. It was open house night, and Alec's dad visited all his classrooms with him while his mom did the 3rd grade tour with Luke. Social studies, math, language arts. Alec trudged along from room to room, sitting down, standing up, nodding when spoken to, smiling now and then. But he barely heard a word of it, hardly noticed anything except how dry his mouth felt and how many times he gulped. And the closer he got to 8 o'clock, the worse he felt. Finally, their classroom visit ended. He and his dad met up with Luke and his mom near the office just as Mrs. Vance made a PA announcement. Please make your way now to the gym for refreshments and a brief presentation about the extended day program. Alec was glad to see a lot of parents and kids heading for the doors, going home. Even so, the hallway leading to the gym was packed. As he shuffled through the doorway with his family, the gym seemed smaller to Alec, and it took him a moment to figure out why. The folding bleachers along the west wall had been pulled out. It looked like almost every seat would be filled in a matter of minutes. At 8:15, Mrs. K stood up and gave a short welcoming speech, introducing herself as the director of the program. Then she said, "And now, it's time for our show and tell, so I'd like all the extended day kids to go to your regular places." Before we talk about the activities that happen here in the gym, I want to introduce Mr. James Langston. He's standing here surrounded by the students every afternoon in our homework room, and he'd like to say a few words. Mrs. Case tried to hand him the portable microphone, but he waved it off. Mr. Langston looked around the gym, and it got even quieter. He had the same effect on all the parents that he'd had on Alec. He cleared his throat, then spoke with a voice so loud and clear that it almost echoed off the walls. The kids who come to my study room work hard every day. It's a wonderful thing to see. We don't have anything special to show everybody this evening, but when the grade cards come out in December, I would stack up the scores of these kids against the scores of any other group of kids in the whole school. They make good use of their afternoons, and it's an honor to spend time helping each of them do such excellent work. Thank you. The applause was loud and long, and the kids gathered around Mr. Langston and were clapping too. It made Alec wish he'd stayed in the homework room. If he had, his open house presentation would be over already. Mrs. Case said, "Thank you, Mr. Langston. And now, we're going to start here in the active games corner of the gym with Mr. Ben Jensen. Then we'll go right around the room, and all the different groups will tell you a little bit about how they spend their afternoons." Alec was back at the club table, and as he sat at his regular spot, Nina smiled at him, but it didn't make him feel any better. The way the room was set up, the Losers Club was last in line for the show and tell. Alec wiped his hands on his pants again, but they kept sweating. Mr. Jensen stood next to home plate on the wiffle ball diamond. The active games kids started out the year with a super kickball league. Now we're having fun with wiffle ball, and pretty soon we're going to switch over to another great indoor game, Nerf dodgeball. He turned to the girls and boys who lined up along the wall behind him and asked a question that sounded totally rehearsed to Alec. Does someone have an idea why so many kids like the active games program? Almost every hand went up, and Mr. Jensen pointed at a 5th grade girl. It's just so fun, and after sitting in a classroom most of the day, it's great to be able to run around. Mr. Jensen gave her a big smile. Thanks, Haley. Now let's get the wiffle ball teams out here and see some action. Totally rehearsed, thought Alec, but he had to admit that it made a good little show. Players took their positions, the pitcher stood at the mound, and it didn't surprise any of the kids to see who was at bat. Kent. He tapped home plate with a skinny yellow bat, got set for the pitch, then crack! The ball whizzed left just above the shortstop, a perfect base hit. Over 500 kids and guests clapped and cheered and hooted as Kent sped to first base, rounded towards second, then held up as the left fielder got the ball back into the infield. Mr. Jensen knew this wasn't going to be a better moment than the one, so he said, "That's what we do," and the kids all get a real kick out of it. Then to the players he said, "Thanks a lot, everybody." And the onlookers clapped again as the team went back to their places along the east wall. Mrs. Case announced, Mr. Brian Wilner is in charge of our club's program. Mr. Wilner? She held out one hand toward him, and the focus shifted to the northeast corner of the gym. Thanks, Mrs. Case. We've got 6 active clubs, and there's a lot going on every day. The club members themselves are going to tell you what they're up to, starting in this corner with the chess club. The 4 chess kids took turns talking about how they were learning the classic moves, studying books and videos with some of the great games of the Grand Masters, and playing several games of their own every day. Their presentation lasted less than 3 minutes. After some polite applause, one of the girls in the origami club stood up and told a little about the history of origami. A very nervous boy then explained how origami teaches a person to be patient, orderly, and precise. Then a girl talked about the kinds of animals and forms they were learning to fold. They ended up by holding up the biggest origami swan that Alec had ever seen, over 2 feet tall, folded from one enormous square of pink paper. And then they placed 20 more swans on the table, each one smaller than the one before, with the very last one so tiny that it was invisible to anyone who was more than 5 feet away. The nervous boy ended up by saying, "And we hope you'll walk by our table and later to look at our designs." More applause. Alec gulped again and again. It was going to be his turn any second now. A girl and a boy from the robotics club took turns explaining a little about their projects and the different kinds of electronics they were using. Then 2 remote control robots the size of shoeboxes darted out from under their table, chased each other halfway across the gym, turned around, and sped back as the crowd laughed and applauded. That took less than 5 minutes. The Lego kids unveiled a castle they had designed and built themselves, but they didn't have much to say about it. 4 minutes tops. More polite applause. The Chinese club had put together a little play, just as Reese had mentioned last Monday. Alec liked it, partly because the shopping scene they had written was clever, and especially because it lasted a full 7 minutes. As the applause for the play died, Alec had wished there had been an earthquake or maybe a fire drill, anything to keep him from having to stand up and talk in front of all these people, and Kent and Nina. But there was nothing he could do except begin. On a nod from Alec, Mr. Wilner pulled a cart out of the club's storage closet and wheeled it over his table. The gym got quiet as Alec unloaded 18 small plastic bins, each one with a cover. 6 bins on the newest table, 6 bins on the chatty table, and 6 bins on the original table in the corner. Every bin was labeled with a different kid's name, and Alec put each one in front of the right person. As he placed Nina's bin on the table, she looked at him, a question on her face. None of the kids in the club knew what he was doing. Alec tried to smile, but he was so nervous that he grinned like a chimpanzee. He stood in front of the table and faced the crowd. "My name is Alex Spencer, and Mr. Jensen called from the side of the gym. 'Louder, please!' Alec gulped, and one of the homework room kids got the portable microphone from Mrs. Case and ran it over to him. He started again, and this time his voice amplified and made him feel like he was yelling. 'My name is Alex Spencer. Our group has 18 members, and it's called the Losers Club.' When he said that, a ripple of awkward laughter ran through the gym. Alex said, 'I've got something I want to say about the club's name, but first I want every member to open the bin there in front of you. Grab the sheet of paper on top of the stack and run in that direction, like this.' Alec popped the top off his own bin. Inside, it looked like a stack of paper, but each sheet was taped to the next, edge to edge, like one long accordion fan. And when Alec grabbed the top sheet and took off toward the far corner of the gym, the paper came streaming out, unfolding from the bin behind him like the tail of a Chinese dragon. Because that big idea during dinner last Monday, this was it. He wanted to show everybody what the so-called losers at his table were doing with their time. He had asked each club member to email him a list of every book they had ever read, all of the ones they had at home, books they'd read in classrooms, and any others they could remember, and also to send him permission to access the titles of all the books they'd ever checked out at the school library. Because he wanted to end up with a pretty accurate total, a list of every single book each of these kids had read during their whole lives, right up to today. For Alec, that list was 537 different books, starting with Goodnight Moon and ending with Fahrenheit 451. Luke had helped him search online and print out pictures of every book cover onto one sheet of regular paper. Then he'd used wide plastic tape to join them onto the long, unfolding river of book covers that followed him. They had both worked 4 hours each night during the school week and then all day Saturday and Sunday. On Thursday, Alec had been ready to quit, but Luke saved the day with a simple database program so they could organize and print all the different cover images in big batches, and a lot of the kids in the club had read the same books. Alec's accordion of book covers was over 380 feet long, so long that he got near home plate and he had to turn to his right and keep pulling the sheets from the bin. The other kids were now laughing, pulling their own streams of book covers from the bin, trotting across the hardwood floor. 18 long trails of paper fanned out from the back corner of the gym. It looked like a satellite image of a huge river delta. Once all the club members had stopped running and had pulled their sheets out of the bin, the other kids and the parents came closer to look and then realized what they were. So many book covers, close to 3,000 in all. There was a burst of conversation as people pointed here and there, spotting books they remembered reading, books that they loved. Alec found a strong, clear voice, a voice he hadn't used before. "Can I have everyone's attention again?" The room hushed quickly, and he said, "What you're looking at here are almost all the books that each of us kids have read so far during our whole lives. And that's what we do in the Losers Club. We read. I made up that name because back in September, I wanted to have a table mostly to myself so I could read with nobody bothering me. And I figured that if I called it the Losers Club, no one else would want to join. But other kids heard that it was just a place to hang out and read, and they liked reading more than they hated the name." They got a quick laugh in the crowd, and Alec went on, "But I thought about it a lot, and the Losers Club is actually a pretty good name. In the school library, there's an old book week poster that says, 'Get lost in a book.' Well, we do that. We lose ourselves in books for hours and hours, books about all kinds of people and tons of different places. Then we come back and we bring these things with us. When we get lost like that, I think we find all kinds of cool stuff." Alec pointed down at his book covers. "Like that book, I Am LeBron James. Before I read it, I never knew what a hard time he had as a kid. And then he went on to be an MVP. And the book Hatchet, I've read that story so many times that if I ever got lost in the wilderness, I'd be scared. But I'd have a lot of ideas about how to stay safe and stay alive. I wouldn't be totally helpless or ignorant. Because books do that for you." Okay, I'm going to stop here and I'll continue next time because I'm running out of time. Thanks, guys.